This week's video lesson is on converting metric units of length. Okay, so today we'll be able to convert between metric units of length. So remember that the first video lesson on measurement we did was on the customary system of length and weight. And in that video, I told you guys that the customary system was a system of measurement that the United States uses to measure objects. So in the United States, when we normally measure objects for length, we use inches, feet, miles, and yards. When we measure weight, we use ounces, pounds, and tons. Pretty much everywhere else in the world uses the metric system. Almost every other country other than the United States uses the metric system. And so today we're still going to be talking about how long objects are, but we're going to be talking about the metric system, so different units that other places in the world use to measure how long objects are. So remember that length is how long something is. So we're going to talk about the 5 units that are used in the metric system. And so for length, the root word for our units is meter. And so all the units that we use are based around that word meter. And so the smallest unit of length in the metric system for length is the millimeter. So when you add that prefix milli in front of the word meter, you're talking about a smaller unit. And a millimeter is really, really small. It's actually the thickness of a dime. So not how long a dime is, but literally how thick a dime is. So when we think about a dime, it's the thinnest coin. It's very, very thin. And so the thickness of one dime is 1 millimeter. So it's a very small unit of measurement. And so the abbreviation for millimeter is mm. The centimeter is the next largest unit. And a centimeter is about the distance across one of your fingernails. And so a centimeter is similar to an inch, but it's a little bit smaller than an inch. But it's still a pretty small unit of measurement. The abbreviation for centimeter is cm. The next largest unit of measurement is the decimeter. And so deci means 10. And so the decimeter is 10 centimeters. And so it's bigger than a centimeter. And it's about the length of a credit card. And the abbreviation for decimeter is dm. The meter is that root word. And so a meter is what the rest of the metric system is based around for length. A meter is kind of similar to a yard. So a meter is about the length of a baseball bat, and its abbreviation is M. The kilometer, and so once again that root word meter, so we put the prefix kilo in front of it. Kilo means bigger. And so if you see a unit that has that kilo in front of it, that's your biggest unit. So milli is always the smallest, kilo is going to be the biggest. And a kilometer is similar to a mile. It's a little bit smaller than a mile, but it's the largest unit. And so a kilometer, once again, is almost the distance from where we are, Lafayette, up to about where Kroger is. So it's a little bit smaller than a mile, but it's a similar distance, and its abbreviation is km. And so from least to greatest, remember when you're going to be memorizing how to put these in order from least to greatest, millimeter is the smallest, centimeter, decimeter, meter, and then kilometer is the largest. So our unit conversions, remember a unit fraction is a fraction with 1 in the numerator. A unit conversion tells you 1 of one unit is equal to how many of another unit. So 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. So it would take about 10 dimes stacked up to go across the length of your fingernail. So 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. 1 decimeter is equal to 10 centimeters. And so it would take about 10 fingernails lined up straight across to equal the length of a credit card. So 1 decimeter has 10 centimeters in it. 1 meter is equal to 10 decimeters. And so 1 baseball bat, which is about 1 meter, would take about 10 credit cards lined up to equal the same length. 1 meter is also equal to 100 centimeters. And so it would take about 100 little fingernails lined up to equal the length of a baseball bat. And if you notice, that makes sense because if 1 meter is 10 decimeters and 1 decimeter has 10 centimeters, 10 times 10 equals 100. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters. 1 meter is also 1,000 millimeters. So it would take 1,000 dimes stacked up with their length with their width to equal the distance that goes across a baseball bat. So that would be a lot of dimes that you would need to equal that length. And once again, that makes sense because if there's 100 centimeters in a meter and there's 10 millimeters in a centimeter, 100 times 10 equals 1,000. So 1 meter is 1,000 millimeters. And then 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. And so to get from Lafayette over to Kroger, you would need about 1,000 baseball bats lined up to equal that same distance. Okay, so when we follow our steps for converting units, remember 1 is always going to be the same amount, but when you have more than 1 unit, we're going to need to use math to figure out how many that's going to be equal to. So it's going to be the exact same steps that we used for converting customary units of length and of weight. Remember that to convert means to change. When we convert between units, we find how many of one unit are equal to another unit. Remember, we follow the same 4 steps. First, we decide and we label, are we changing larger to smaller or smaller to larger? Remember, that's when we circle and draw our arrow and label those. We decide if we're multiplying or if we're dividing. So remember, when we're changing a larger unit to a smaller unit, we're going to multiply. When we're changing a smaller unit to a larger unit, we're going to divide. We then write the unit conversion between the 2 units. So how many of one are equal to how many of another unit? And then we use the conversion in our operation to solve. So remember that if we've got our kind of math and the numbers, then it should be easy to solve for the correct number of units. Okay. So example 1, we're going to change 4 meters into blank centimeters. And so the first thing we're going to do is label larger to smaller, smallest to larger. So we're changing meters into centimeters. Remember that a meter is about the length of a baseball bat. A centimeter is about the length going across your fingernail. And so a meter is obviously larger. So we're going from larger to smaller. We label, that means we're going to be multiplying. Our unit conversion is how many of 1 meter are equal to centimeters. And so 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. Then we multiply or divide. So if we know that 1 meter is 100 centimeters, that means 4 meters times 100 centimeters in each is going to give us our total number of centimeters. And so as a tape diagram, we know that we're going to have 4 meters. So each box is the larger unit. Those are our unit conversions. 1 meter each has 100 centimeters in it. And so 10 groups of 100, we can box and underline. We don't even need to set that up and down. We can use our 0 non-zero shortcut. 4 times 1 is 4. We have 2 zeros, so we put our 2 zeros. So 4 meters is equal to 400 centimeters. Okay. Example 2, 3 kilometers or kilometers is equal to how many meters? So just like we've been doing, we're going to label kilometers to meters. So a kilometer is the distance from Lafayette to Kroger. A meter is the length of a baseball bat. So kilometers are definitely larger. So we're going larger to smaller. Remember, that means we multiply. Our unit conversions. So how many kilometers are equal to how many meters? So 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. That's our unit conversion. 1 kilometer is equal to how many meters? So if we know 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters, we've got 3 kilometers times 1,000 meters in each kilometer. So for our tape diagram, we've got 3 groups because each kilometer is a group. We've got 1,000 meters in each kilometer. Once again, we can use a 0 non-zero shortcut. So 3 times 1,000. 3 times 1 is 3. We've got 3 zeros. So 3 kilometers is 3,000 meters. Remember that we can also draw a conversion table to help us solve conversions. So let's say that we are trying to convert decimeters into centimeters. Okay, so remember, a decimeter is a credit card, a centimeter is like the length of your nail. So we write the units on opposite sides of the table. So since a decimeter is larger, we're going to put decimeter on one side. We're going to try to make it into centimeters. We'll put the larger one on the left. So we're going larger to smaller, which means we're going to multiply. So the rule for the table should be multiply. And our conversion will tell us what we're going to be multiplying by. So we start with one of the larger unit and the equivalent amount of the smaller units. So we know that 1 decimeter is equal to 10 centimeters. So that means that the rule for the table should be times 10. So we're going to write that all the way down. Okay. So that means if I have 1 decimeter, 1 times 10, so now we're going to solve for the missing numbers since we've already got our conversion and our operation. 1 decimeter is going to give us 10 centimeters. That makes sense because if we've got 1 decimeter, that's 10 centimeters. Okay. We're going to skip down to 6 times 10. We'll go back up to the ones where we're missing the decimeters in a second. So if I've got 6 decimeters, there's 10 centimeters in each. So we would line up 6 of these. So 6 times 10 is going to give me 60 centimeters. Remember, sometimes when we're given the number of the smaller unit, we have to go backwards. So if I've got 40 centimeters, I want to know how many decimeters I would have had to start with. So I can think about it in 2 ways. I can say to myself, what times 10 equals 40? I can also think about 40 divided by 10 equals what? So I know that 4 times 10 will equal 40. So that means that 40 centimeters equals 4 decimeters. And same thing, 40 divided by 10 would give me that 4. Same thing down here when I've got 80 centimeters, and I want to know how many decimeters that is. I know that 8 times 10 equals 80. I could also say 80 divided by 10 equals 8. So we can do that by either finding the missing factor or by using the inverse operation, which would be division. Okay. This conversion chart, we're going to be changing meters into millimeters. So remember, meter is like a baseball bat, so that's larger. Millimeter is the thickness of a dime, which is definitely smaller. So that rule is going to be to multiply, and we can write our conversion to figure out what to multiply by. So 1 meter is equal to 1,000 millimeters. So that means that the rule for the table is going to be multiply 1,000. So we're going to write that all the way down. Okay. So 1 times 1,000 is obviously 1,000, and that makes sense because 1 meter is equal to 1,000 millimeters. So that means every time I've got a meter, I'm going to have 1,000 millimeters in it. Okay, and sorry, this says 6 times 1,000 should be 5,000. We're going to fix that. So 6 times 1,000, 6 meters is going to give me 6,000 millimeters. Up here, we're missing the numbers of meters, so remember we have to go backwards. So we can either say what times 1,000 equals 4,000, or we can say 4,000 divided by 1,000 would give me how many meters. So we know that 4 times 1,000 would give us 4,000 millimeters, and then 4,000 divided by 1,000, that would be 4.